Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Hi, everybody. Joe Trippi here, Democratic strategist and host of That Trippi Show and my new show, On the Ground with Joe Trippi. With me is the other Joe, celebrated journalist Joe Klein. Joe's been covering political campaigns, well, let's just say for a long, long time. And I've sure been running them just about as long. Sometimes we agree, other times not so much. And today we're talking about Nebraska 2, the blue dot. Joe?
Yeah, I think we first met on the Rutherford B. Hayes campaign. Was that it, Joe? Something like that. Anyway, we're continuing our series this week. In case you hadn't noticed, we do have this series of interesting young candidates running for the Congress. And this week, it's this woman.
I used to keep my passport at home in our safe. Now I carry it with me to prove I'm here legally. I'm Denise Powell. My parents fled authoritarian regimes. I know how fragile democracy is. It's why I've helped provide immigrants with legal aid and was the first candidate to call for Kristi Noem to be removed from office. In Congress, we can stop ICE from terrorizing our communities. I approve this message because it's up to us. Let's be brave.
Well, that certainly strikes home with me because my daughter-in-law is from the Dominican Republic. She's a U.S. citizen, and she travels around. She brings my granddaughter to school every day in Charlotte, North Carolina, carrying her passport. So, Denise Powell, there you are. Hi.
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 I'm so glad to be here.
Great to have you with us.
I have a confession to make.
Okay.
I am a great admirer of the current holder of the seat that you're running for, Don Bacon. I'm on the advisory board of the bipartisan military caucus. Don was one of the founders of that group. And I'm an admirer of his because we have a lot of Republicans in that group, and he's one of the very few who has been willing to go up in Donald Trump's face. I'm wondering about you and the Democratic Party and your independence, because to me, the one thing we really have been missing, I mean, the bipartisan military caucus is about the only bipartisan active show in town right now. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think of Don. Tell me what you think about being an independent congressperson.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have enormous respect, actually, for Congressman Bacon. And we don't agree on everything. We don't agree on a lot of things. But he is consistently somebody that I've heard from Democratic House members who have said, he was one of the few people who would really be willing to listen with us and sit with us and have conversations with us. And I think there's a lot of power in that, especially as we think about just how polarized politics has become today. And in some ways, I hope to bring that kind of same energy on the other side. Nebraska is a complicated state. It's a red state in a lot of ways. Now, this district leans more blue, is, maybe purple. And but the fact is, we don't get things done here with only Democrats. We don't win this seat with only Democrats. And so I think not only is it critical to be an independent voice that is really willing to listen, not just to the constituents, but also to our other lawmakers in the state. I mean, I think we all want to bring home good stuff for Nebraska. And if you can find ways to partner with people who maybe hold different beliefs from you, but who also care about the same things, care about the state, I think that's how we're actually going to move things forward for Nebraska. I think too much we're talking a big game, but we're not actually getting anything done. And I just don't think you get anything done if you're not willing to work with people who have different ideas from you.
You emphasized ICE in that ad, one of your first ads. Do you think things have changed there? Has Markwayne Mullin made a difference? They're certainly trying to stay out of the headlines now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because here in Omaha in particular and in Nebraska, the ICE approach has been more like a scalpel and not a shotgun like we saw in Minnesota. And I think sometimes that has people thinking that perhaps ICE has disappeared. But I'm in conversations with people in this community every day who are still feeling it. And there are folks who are still scared to leave their homes to go grocery shopping because they're scared of being picked up. There are people who are looking at moving out of the state and looking at places where maybe they feel like themselves or their families are safer. And so I think it's still a real issue. And until we see significant changes to the way that ICE operates, I think we've got to keep the pressure up. I really worry about the way that they have just, done aside with the rule of law. I mean, warrantless searches and, pulling people out of schools and things. And these are things that I'm hearing about right here in our community. I'm not inventing them. People are telling me that these things are happening to them. And I think it's clear that ICE needs a complete overhaul. And I think the leadership from the top to the bottom needs to be revisited. And I think folks in our community are really talking about it because it impacts not just our families and our community, but it impacts so many of our industries here. Obviously, in Nebraska, we have a big agricultural community. It's something that I hear from our farmers that is a concern for them. We have a big healthcare community. It's impacting our healthcare community. So, we're looking at it both from the moral implications, but also from the economic implications that it's having on a state like ours.
When I was in Iowa about 3 or 4, maybe 6 weeks ago now, the thing I realized was because there was all the same kind of feeling, it's fear of being picked up and their lives disrupted. But it felt to me, and I just want to get your take on this, it felt to me like the proximity to Minneapolis of Nebraska and Iowa, in other words, that people were more affected by it in a different way than maybe somebody that was miles away. And I just wondered, whether local news was more focused on it because of the proximity, and is that, have you felt that, or am I off base there?
No, I think you're totally right. And I think it's we think in a city like Omaha and a city like Minneapolis, like these things can't happen. Yep. These types of images that we were seeing come out of Minneapolis, you think of those associated with like other kinds of places, not like us here in the Midwest. And I think it was a real wake-up call for a lot of people that this can happen in communities like this. It was a wake-up call for people when folks like Renee Good and Alex Preddy were shot, that you're not safe. And I think that really scared a lot of people into realizing that this was a real example of this administration's overreach. And I think it's just woken a lot of people up and made a lot of people realize that this administration has in a lot of ways gone rogue, and they're coming after American people who disagree with them. And like I said in my ad, my family, my dad is from Chile, my mom is from Cuba. These were conversations that we used to have at the dinner table about what life was like for them before they left these countries. And so I do worry. And I wasn't even thinking about carrying my passport. And my dad actually said to me, "You have your passport with you at all times." And I thought, I look like this and I sound like this, but Spanish was my first language. And I'm out in the community talking to people all the time. And it just made me rethink it and just want to make sure that I'm taking every precaution that I can to be safe. And if I'm thinking about it, if, I'm talking to attorneys who are carrying their passport because they're Indian American, or physicians who are carrying their passport because they're African, or, whatever, this is impacting so many people. And just the fear and the idea that that you're not welcome here is just a terrible, terrible thing to live with every day. And I think we need to do better by our communities. We have a big immigrant community here in Nebraska that I truly worry for every day.
Joe and I were talking, and in fact, Joe, I'd like you to tell the story about Walter Mondale at Iowa Beef Packers. We were talking before we went on the air. In our experience, in my experience, meatpacking, it was a big industry there, and a lot of the workers had not come here legally. And I'm just wondering what the status of those people are now. Have they been culled out? Are there a lot of undocumented people still working in the meatpacking plants? And to top it all off, what would you do about it? I mean, we may have 11 million law-abiding illegal immigrants in this country. What do we do about them?
Okay, there are a lot of layers to that question. So the first
Yep.
one, I don't I want to take them all. The first part of that is I don't know what the statistics are, but I know that right after our new Democratic mayor was sworn into office last year, we had a raid on a packing plant here in the city, and they took a lot of people from that packing plant, people who had no criminal record, and that's what started a lot of the real fear here in our community. I know that a lot of these companies take all the precautions that they can to make sure that they're hiring workers that are here legally. And as to the question of, and I might be missing one of the questions in between, but the question about what you do about it, I think we need pathways to citizenship for people who are here and working and contributing to society and building communities and are trying to do all the right things. I served on the board of directors for 6 years of Nebraska's largest agency to provide legal services to immigrants and refugees. And I know that the legal system is clunky. Even when it's working great, it's clunky. And it's expensive. You can't navigate the system by yourself. It's really hard. And so people here, there's a Nebraska immigrant legal hotline assistance number, and there's wait times of months and months. And a typical immigration law process could take anywhere from 4 years, even longer sometimes. So people come to the country and maybe they start the process and they're trying to do the right things, but the process is long and arduous. And I think if we're not being serious about having real pathways to citizenship for those folks, we're losing huge opportunities. We're losing talent. In Nebraska, we talk so much about brain drain, and yet we're doing everything we can to push people out of the state. And I think that's really unfortunate. We talk about population growth across the country, and we've got people who want to come here, want to work, and we should be doing everything in our power to make sure that those people can do it legally.
Well, 100 years ago, in 1924, the Republican Party passed through the Congress an anti-immigration bill that prevented people from my great-grandparents and Trippi's from coming to the country, focused on Jews and Irish and Chinese, not Irish, Italians and Chinese. The Irish were already white people by that point. They hadn't been. And we're seeing the same thing over and over again. In my mind, those folks are what makes the country great. They're the people who work hard. And when you say pathways to citizenship, what would you do? Could you just fill out a form and say, I've been, offer your proof of employment and say, I've been here for 15 years and here's a letter of recommendation from my landlord? What would you do?
I mean, those all sound like great ideas, but, I think that the immigrant legal system in this country hasn't been updated in 40 years. And are there ways to make it more efficient? Yeah, I think there absolutely should be more ways to make it more efficient. I think that part of it is making sure that we have the systems in place to help process folks, process applications quickly, make sure that we have the legal framework in order to make sure that people who are here are playing by the rules. I mean, listen, I am all for the concept of border security. I know that I have a lot of families, even a lot of my immigrant friends, who obviously want to make sure that violent criminals aren't walking our streets here. I agree with all of that, but I believe that the system itself was never really designed to help ensure that people who are coming here and doing things all the right way, or trying to do things the right way, have a real shot at coming in the door. And I think if we're not willing to update the system to make sure that we are investing in everything from, judges and attorneys and all that stuff, nothing's ever going to change.
So I'd like to get into the campaign a little bit. I mean, what are you finding as you're campaigning? Where's the race in your eyes? And, look, we've talked about everywhere we're seeing independents sort of moving away from MAGA and Trump, and just sort of get your take on what it's like out there, what people are talking to you about, beyond immigration, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
What are the big issues, and how do you see the race, the hierarchy of the race, and where things stand in terms of? I know you raised more money than any of the other candidates, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to sort of level set, so this is the 2nd district. It is at the moment rated lean Democrat by Cook Political and Inside Elections, which is, a big deal. Obviously, we talked about Congressman Bacon retiring, so it's an open seat now. Nebraska 2 is a seat that went for Kamala Harris in 2024 by 6 points, if I remember, and Don Bacon held his seat by less than 2 points. This district also went for Biden in 2020 and Obama in 2008. So we're a really interesting district that's pretty representative of the electorate across the country. We're almost split 30-30-30, Democrat, Independent, Republican, with independents being the fastest growing group of voters in our state and in this district for sure. And I don't think it's probably not surprising that the big conversations here are around affordability and what I would deem an affordability crisis. A lot of conversations about healthcare. Obviously, the Medicaid cuts coming from the big, beautiful bill, the cost increases for the ACA, but also just all the stuff that we know is problematic to begin with, prescription drug costs, just all the things. And on top of that, Nebraska has one of the highest gaps between the cost of childcare and the median household income. Housing, instability. I mean, we've got all these issues that are coming to a head in this moment, and the administration is just making everything worse. So that's the big conversation that I'm having with folks, really. And as it relates to the state of the race, we feel pretty good. Our primary is on May 12th, so we're less than 2 weeks out. I'm excited. To your point, Joe, I've raised more money than anybody in the race, including the lone Republican. So it's a pretty crowded primary on the Democratic side, but there's only one Republican running, and we've outraised him. I have some great endorsements. I was endorsed by last cycle's Democratic nominee, Tony Vargas, who's a dear friend and kind of one of the folks that recruited me to run for this seat. And then groups like Emily's List and the Congressional Hispanic Caucuses PAC, Bold PAC, but even folks on the ground here, like the Nebraska Young Democrats, the Nebraska Black Caucus, the Latino Caucus. And so we have a lot of support, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of folks out there helping us, knock doors and do meet and greets and speak to book clubs. And I'm just getting out and talking to anybody who will have me. And it's been great. I mean, we feel really good about where we are. My parents are immigrants. I was always taught I had to work harder, faster, smarter than anybody else. So I'm running like I'm in 12th place, and I have to keep my foot on the gas between now and May 12th. But I'm excited. I feel really hopeful. And we've got some awesome people running for office up and down the ballot in Nebraska. So I'm really excited about what's possible in 2026 for my state. And I'm really excited about what's possible in 26 for this country.
What do you think the Democrats have done wrong in a place like Nebraska? Why are they perceived as being so far out of the mainstream that people would vote for? I mean, I've known Donald Trump for 40 years. I'm from the same borough, Queens.
Wow.
And well, it's not that great a distinction, but we New Yorkers knew he was a flim-flam artist and a phony from day one, and yet the American people voted for him. What has been going wrong with the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. And as a little background on me, 9 years ago, I founded an organization that's become sort of the Emily's List of Nebraska. So we work to train and recruit, support women running for office across the state. And so I work with a lot of different kinds of candidates here because you have to in Nebraska. I think a lot of times Democratic messaging, and please take no offense to my friends on the coast here, but it comes from the coast. We see leadership from California, leadership from New York, and Nebraska and places like Nebraska are just a different animal. And I know that when I'm out talking to people here, they'll say things like the Democrats are focused on the wrong things. They're not focused on the right priorities. I hear from Democrats that they feel like Democrats aren't fighting hard enough. There's a lot to the story, but I think we have lost our way as the Democratic Party with working families. As a Latina, we've lost our way with Latinos. And I hope that we're starting to bring all those groups back to the table. It sounds like more and more people are starting to associate Democrats with economic issues at this point than Republicans, which I think is helpful. But it's taken some intentionality in reaching back out to those audiences. I think that's where we lose, where we get lost on lots of different messaging that just doesn't really resonate with most people's lives. I think most people, certainly here in my state, in my district, they're just trying to get out of the house in the morning, make sure their kids are wearing 2 shoes on their feet and they didn't forget their lunchbox. You know, they're not listening to all the noise, but so much of our media right now is being consumed in these quick 30-second sound bites on TikTok and Instagram. And so they're really not digesting. And Joe, as a, veteran newsman, this must drive you crazy, but they're not digesting all of it. And so they hear these quick sound bites and they just think, God, these people don't speak for me. They don't get me. They don't understand what my life is like. And that's why I've been so hyper focused on the affordability message. It's this idea that your life is tough. The government is making it harder for you, and we should really fix that. And that's a message that people can wrap their heads around because they know that things aren't working well for them. And they're looking for someone who can say those things and then actually hopefully show up and fix it for them.
That sets up the stat of the week. If Sam can, yeah. So to put a point on that, it's more important. The number's not that important. The numbers says that the country now trusts Democrats more on the economy, 52%, the Republicans 48%. What's significant is this is the Fox News poll, and it's the first time, I think, ever, or at least the first time since 2010, I think, where they found that the Democrats are leading on the economy. So I just wanted to, you just set that up, and I wanted to flag that as our stat of the week.
That was good teamwork.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I said that was good teamwork.
Yeah.
Do you worry that the affordability issue is being oversold by Democrats? It seems to me that the basic components, which are healthcare, health insurance, housing, are structural things that are not going to be able to be changed overnight. They're going to take a lot of doing, and in a global economy, we just don't have all that much control over grocery prices. Do you worry that you're going to be able to do as much about affordability as Donald Trump has, although he sent it in the wrong direction with his tariffs?
Yeah, what I think about those things a lot. I think when you're running a campaign like this, folks want to know, what's the first thing you're going to do? And it's almost like they want you to wave your magic wand. And what are you going to fix first? You're going to fix healthcare in America. And let's be honest, these are systems that are fragile, that are weak, that are damaged, that it's going to take a long time, to your point, to fix. But I think we need to recognize what people are feeling. And that's part of what this conversation is about. I just ordered groceries. I had 3 bags, little plastic bags of groceries delivered. It was like bread, some yogurt, some deli meat, and it was $60. And that's the conversation that I'm having with folks. And when they talk about going to the pump and, pumping gas in their car, and they're like, my gosh, the price of gas, they don't always understand all the global impacts that are causing gas prices to rise, that are causing grocery prices to rise. But they know that when they go to the grocery store, things are getting harder to afford. And the reality is, I was at the grocery store a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to this much older woman who had been retired for a long time. Her hands were so gnarled by arthritis. She was bagging groceries, and she could barely move some of the items on the grocery line. So I was helping her, get things down to the carousel. And she was telling me that she's bagging groceries at the grocery store because she can't afford her prescription drugs and her medication. She's terrified about what's happening to Social Security, the housing costs are. People are struggling. They're struggling here every day. And if you don't at least recognize that you see their struggle and that you get it and that you are going to fight like hell to try to do something about it, they feel like you're not paying attention to the right things. And I know that we're not going to fix this overnight. And I always tell people I'm not going to promise you things that I can't deliver on. But what I promise is that I'm going to get in there and I'm going to work as hard as I can to bring resources back in our community to help support people, especially during these times where folks are they're having a hard time making ends meet. I'm talking to farmers who don't know if they're going to make it to the end of the season, and families who are, not paying their utilities because they had to put it into the gas this week. And this is very real for people. And if we're not recognizing the reality of this situation, I think we lose.
Are they connecting the dots between Trump's policies and the prices in the grocery store and at the pump? Do you get many questions about Iran, or is that just in some other, universe?
Yeah, I actually don't get a lot of questions about Iran.
I
bring it up. Yeah, I bring it up. To your point, I think my role as a candidate and candidates all over the country, our role is to help connect those dots for people because they know their lives are getting tougher, but they don't always know why. And so it's my job to get out there and say, listen, this war that Trump has gotten us into after promising no more foreign wars is causing our gas prices to spike. And I was just talking about it today as I think of summer break coming up. Summer is one of the hardest times for working families. It stinks. You don't know where to send your kid. Summer camp is expensive. Childcare here is ridiculously off the charts expensive. When my kids are at home, they are eating me out of house and home. So now your grocery bill is skyrocketing. And if you want to take a summer trip, whether it's a 2.5-hour drive to Kansas City, it's going to cost you twice as much now because of gas prices. And so this is really real. This is really real for people. And my job is to connect those dots so that folks understand that if they want some change, we've got to start electing people that are going to push back on this administration.
That's kind of the fact. That they can't. This is sort of amazing to me. It gets to the journalistic problem of fragmentation and everything that to not be able to connect that the war in Iran is driving up is why you're paying so much at the pump. But I run into that too. It's just, but I do think that's part of how we got here because of the fragmentation. They just don't know, and I don't think the Democratic Party writ large has been very good at explaining a lot of that to people, or pointing in the right direction. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Go ahead.
No, please, Joe, go ahead.
No, I just remember that I used to take, I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I spent some time in Iran. And I remember when the Tea Party started in 2010, I looked at TV and I said, I know more about the Middle East than I do about the Middle West. And so I started taking road trips. And first one was right across the country, right through Nebraska. And afterwards, President Obama asked me to come in and tell him what I had seen. And I said, you know how obsessed I am with Afghanistan and Iraq. There weren't any questions about it, but everybody really was concerned about China. And they wanted to know why you haven't made a big speech about it. So it doesn't surprise me that you're getting that. The question is, how do you send the message? How do you connect that dot? If Joe and I are sitting in your audience, what do you say to us to make us understand how Iran is connected to their lives?
Yeah. We talk about the fact that the president has launched us into this conflict in Iran with seemingly no strategy, no exit plan, without partners, without people willing to support this effort. And because of it, we're seeing all of our gas prices go up. One thing that people here really understand is our farm economy. And interestingly enough, the conversations that I do have about foreign policy, a lot of those tend to be with our farmers who understand that this war in Iran is impacting access to fertilizer. This is the season. This is the time of the season where farmers fertilize their crops. And the cost of fertilizer is just, through the roof right now. You can't even get it. On top of that, diesel fuel for their machinery and everything is really expensive. They're angry. They're angry. And they're angry when they see this government bailing out Argentina while they're struggling to, pay the bills on the family farm up the road here. And so oftentimes we connect back to that because that's something that people here really understand. You've got a lot of people in Omaha who grew up on family farms out west or still have grandma living on the family farm out west, and they know how important it is and what a vital part of our economy it is. So we try to connect the dots for people lots of different ways. Sometimes it really is just as simple as saying, like, have you noticed that your gas is more expensive when you're driving, little Timmy out to baseball practice out west? Well, this is why, this war in Iran, and we try to explain, but you want to explain it simply too, because most people can't pick the Strait of Hormuz out of a lineup, right? But
Right.
you want to explain to them the basic premise that because of this war, there's less access to the materials that we need, and it is causing the price of gas. It's a supply and demand issue. It's causing the price of gas to go up. And that's enough for most people. That's enough for most people to wrap their head around and to be angry about it.
Yeah, now we've got that. I think that's the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is asking for financial support from the U.S. and the Trump administration is actually looking into doing it.
Right. Right.
That would be pretty, particularly for farmers. It should be relatively, something they would ask questions about it.
They would ask questions about it. Yeah, they absolutely would.
I'm going to ask a question that comes out of left field, but shouldn't. It should be right on the main agenda. You're a woman, I've noticed. You started the equivalent of Emily's List in Nebraska. You have a lot of support from women. And it seems to me that the success of women in our society over the last 60 years since liberation began to come has been spectacular. But we don't talk about the other side of the coin. I mean, at this point, more Black women graduate from college. A greater percentage of Black women graduate from college than white men. And in my experience, especially in poor neighborhoods, and especially in working class neighborhoods, we got a real boy problem. Boys aren't doing as well as girls. Mm-hmm. And have you given any thought to this? And are there any answers that you would, if someone asked you that question at a town meeting?
Yeah, I think a lot about that. I have 2 children. I have one of each. So, my home feels like a little science experiment sometimes. And I have a 12-year-old son and an almost 16-year-old daughter. And I think about that. Yeah, we're in the peak time.
I remember those days.
They're awesome. They are such good kids. I know I'm biased, but they are really great kids. But, I run this organization where we talk a lot about the challenges that women face and when they're running for office, the challenges that women face in the workplace generally. And I'm really conscious of the fact that I want to make sure that my son understands those challenges and could be a good ally and supporter without necessarily crushing him and his spirit too, and it is something that we think about a lot. The fact is, and I knew this, it's part of why I created my organization, because I knew that women face different challenges than men faced. Fundraising challenges about the kind of questions that they get asked, the expectations on what they look like and how they present themselves and their tone. I knew that theoretically. And now as a candidate myself, I see it on a whole new level. And it is very, very bizarre to be running as a woman in this moment. And I think that we saw this pink wave after Trump was elected the first time. And I think it peaked in 2020. And then slowly and steadily, that number has gone down. Now in Nebraska, we've seen more and more women running for office kind of further down ballot, which has been wonderful. And a big thing that my organization, flames that my organization has been stoking. But the fact is, there are still a lot of challenges and a lot of headwinds. And I think we're also seeing this administration and a lot of their supporters really make a lot of decisions that feel very misogynistic and very anti-women as it relates to healthcare and voting rights and all these things. And so I think that the fight continues. And I think it's important for our men to know that, there's a place, even my organization, we supported great male candidates, especially after Roe fell. And we knew that we needed to elect champions for reproductive rights to our legislature, regardless of gender at that point. There are great men in this work. And so, oh yeah, I'm sorry, Joe.
But the question was about boys, about your 12-year-old, and what kind of policies we can, we can commit to that would make them more interested in school and working, and the Democratic Party, because as you know, young men, they listen to Joe Rogan, and they are not thrilled with the Democratic Party.
Yeah. I think a lot about social media, the impact of social media on our children. That's a big thing. We have a lot of screen time rules, and we have all the settings on all the devices to try to keep our children off of content that's inappropriate. But they see things out there all the time. And my son will tell me about things that somebody showed him on a phone at school that I would never have allowed or encouraged in my house. And I think that we have some opportunities to create some policies to protect our children as it relates to social media. I think we have some opportunities to create some guardrails around things like AI. I think we need to be doing more to protect our children as it relates to technology and what they're being exposed to. I think a lot about this like weird manaverse culture and, this perpetuation of male stereotypes and all these things online. And I think that we have a responsibility at the federal level to take some actions and do what we can to ensure that those guardrails exist. And I know that at the end of the day, I say this as a mom who, again, has all the settings up and is trying to do all the right things in terms of limiting access and screen time and all that stuff. And my son is still exposed to it. So a lot of that, unfortunately, it lays on us as parents to have these conversations at home. I think it's really easy to sort of make blanket, we need the government to do this. Yes, we do. But also it's our responsibility as parents to have these conversations with our kids and to try to do our best to monitor the situation. And I say that without judgment or, because I know that this is easier said than done. But I think we've got to try, because I think you're right, Joe. My son, again, he's a really good kid, but I do worry about the ideas and the concepts that he's being exposed to, a lot of them that are really anti-democratic. And without a household that is invested in having those conversations at home, I would worry about where he would go from here.
Denise, I think we're getting close to running out of time here, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find more information about you, how they can help you in our audience. So if you can close us out with just telling people how they can help or where they can find more information, that'd be great.
Well, that is so kind. My website is deniseforcongress.org. Like I said, the primary election is May 12th. We're feeling really good about the opportunity to flip this seat. If you go to that website, you can find links to all of our social media channels. Find more information there. You can sign up to volunteer, to donate, to learn more. I'm so grateful for this time. Thank you for having me on this show. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share my love of Nebraska with everyone.
Well, Cornhuskers actually did rather well in basketball this year, didn't they?
They did. They did. We were very, very proud. We love our Huskers here in Nebraska.
Well, I love your bizarre state capital, and you have a unicameral legislature, right?
We do. 49 state senators who make a lot of really important choices for us. Nonpartisan, should I add.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck with your campaign. Joe, you got something else?
No, I'll just close us out. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Two Joes. Please leave us a like or comment or review, and please share this episode with a friend. You can,
or even an enemy.
Yeah, even an enemy. And if somehow you want even more from us, there's the Two Joes. Please check out Joe Klein's Substack, Sanity Clause, and my other podcast, That Trippi Show, and On the Ground with Joe Trippi. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Denise Powell, for being with us today.
Thank you both so much.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.